Hey guys, Victor here, coming at you again with another deck profile, and today we're going to be focusing on Tearlaments Yubel, and this is going to be an update to the previous list that I have showcased on this channel before, where we're basically just trying to find like the perfect ratios to mix Yubel with Tearlament, because now that the Gruesome Grave Squirmer has released, as well as the Nightmare Throne, there is a little bit more synergy that can be, utilized between the two archetypes. However, we are still patiently awaiting the release of Phantom of Yubel, because once that card comes out, then the full potential of this deck is going to be finally realized. But until then, it's still a pretty fun, solid deck that you can mess around with, and this is by no means like the most consistent version of it, right? I'm just throwing it out there into the void, and if you can improve upon it, I definitely recommend it, and share it down below because I'd love to see what changes you guys would make. So with that out of the way, let's just jump straight into the deck profile. Now, as always, we're going to be starting off with the monster lineup, and we're going to be focusing on the Tearlament portion first, just because it's like more standard compared to the Yubel stuff, and it's more well known, I guess, since, let's face it, a lot of the Yubel cards are new. So anyways, we're going to be starting off with 3 Tearlaments Reinoheart. This is still going to be your preferred normal summon, whether you're sending Tear Cache to mill 2 or just any of the other Tearlament monsters to fusion summon. You're still just, you're trying to get your engine going. And like worst case scenario, like I said, you're either milling your deck for 2 cards at least, or you're making like a Bahamut Toad line, thanks to like all the different types of dark monsters that we play. So yeah, gotta play 3 of it. And then to go with our 3 Reinohearts, you're playing 3 Tearlaments Kashtira. Another phenomenal card, on normal or special summon, it mills 3 cards from either your deck or your opponent's deck, but we're pretty much always just going to mill our own deck. And then when it's into the graveyard, you get to mill 2 more, so pretty solid. And then for the other Tearlaments, you just play the 1 of names that we're allowed to play, so the 1 merrli, the 1 havnis, and the 1 Scheiren. They all mill 3 if you can meet their conditions, and then they all fusion summon as well. And if we could play more, we would, but we can't, so we won't. And that's it for the Tearlament lineup. Really small. You could include cards like Fenrir and stuff like that, but I wanted to make this version like as basic as possible to be able to clearly express like all the different lines that you could potentially take, which is why I'm not including them. Like, you could very easily fit it in depending on like what ratios you want to play, but yeah, for now this is perfectly fine. Then we can now focus on the Yubel portion. For 3 ofs, you're playing the 3 Spirit of Yubel. Not much to say. You pretty much always want to open with this card, just because you want to get it into the graveyard as soon as possible, or even if like you can't get rid of it from your hand, right? It's almost guaranteed to buy you another turn, and then the follow-up that you get by searching out your Nightmare Pain, for example, is just invaluable. Then it's also dark, so you can fuse with it to make like your Mudragon for the Bahamut Toad play, much like every other Yubel card. But yeah, 3 Spirit of Yubel, that's pretty much like one of the main centerpieces of the deck. And then to go with that, we're playing 3 Gruesome Grave Squirmers. So because the objective of this deck is to mill as many cards as possible, you pretty much want to max out on this card just because of its graveyard effect, where you can banish it and then you special summon a fiend from either your hand or your grave with 0/0 stats, and that's pretty much every single Yubel card. So yeah, you basically want to have access to this card as often as possible. And then the other effects too, where it's like a quick effect you can special summon from your hand, allows you to link climb higher or dodge cards like Infinite Impermanence or Effect Veiler, because you can special summon this card, and then you get to destroy a Yubel or a monster that pretty much like mentions Yubel in its card text, which it's really great for helping your Spirit of Yubel's resolve, because it's, like I said, it's pretty important that they actually do something, as Nightmare Pain, Spirit of Yubel, all fantastic cards that you want to have access to as often as possible. Then that's it for the 3 ofs, but for the 2 ofs, you just play 2 Samsara D Lotus. Since Reinoheart is going to be our main normal summon, you don't really need to play more than 2 of this. You can even make like an argument for just playing 1, right? Because we're going to be milling a ton of cards anyways, so at some point we're pretty much bound to mill this card. And yeah, but I think 2 is fine. Like I said, I just want this deck to be as basic as possible, just to try and get as many ideas across without getting into like the really complex plays. Then you play your 1 of Yubels, being like the 1 original Yubel and the 1 Terra incarnate. Not much to say. You pretty much the standard ratio in every single Yubel deck. You play 1/1. Sometimes you can make an argument for 2 OG Yubel, but it's not really needed in this deck, even though it does come up every so often, but it's fine. And then for the other 1 ofs, you played 1 Dark Beckoning Beast. We're still doing the 1 Dark Beckoning Beast plus the 3 opening of the Spirit Gates. It doesn't matter if you open this card, thanks to Reinoheart, we can always fusion summon it away and then ensure that our opening of the Spirit Gates, are actually able to resolve. Much like the Samsara Lotus, you don't really normal summon this card either. You're typically just discarding it for fodder, or just making sure that it somehow gets back into the deck so your opening of the Spirit Gates are always live. But there are a couple times where that extra normal summon does come up, so just keep that in mind. Like, this deck while it does revolve around Reinoheart and prefers to normal summon it, it doesn't always have to do that. So yeah, one Dark Beckoning Beast is perfectly fine. And then for the final monster, we play one Destrudo, the Lost Dragon's Fissure. So this is going to be a spoiler for later on in the video, but this card only serves one purpose. It's to make Ancient Fairy Dragon, and then that in turn allows us to either destroy a field spell on the field to add another one, or we get a special summon a monster from our hand that's level 4 or lower. And we're going to be using both effects pretty often, honestly, and yeah, that's really all this card is pretty much there for. And with that, that's the monster lineup, and now we can finally move on to the spell and trap portion. Now for the spell and trap lineup, we basically maxed out on everything that we could for the most part. There are a couple cards that we just opted to not max out on, but we'll get to that when we get to that. But for now, we're playing 3 Tearlaments Scream. Much like Tear Cash and all the other ones, you pretty much want to open with this card as often as possible because it just helps you mill more consistently. Then you have your 3 opening of the Spirit Gates to be able to, you know, bring back your Fiend monsters from your graveyard. Just by discarding a card, you can bring back any 0/0 Fiend, which is going to be pretty much your entire Yubel engine, right? You can get back your Spirits, you can get back your OGs, you can get back your Samsara Lotuses. It's just a really solid card. And then the other effect, you know, as well, where you're able to add back continuous spells from your graveyard if you control a face-up level 10, does come up pretty frequently, especially as like a method to add back Tearlaments Scream. So, and it doesn't have to just add that, right? You can add copies of itself for like infinite fodder. You can add copies of Nightmare Pain. You have plenty of choices. And speaking of Nightmare Pain, we're of course going to be playing 3 of it. You know, it's really good in the original Yubel deck just because it forces your opponent to basically battle with you, and in a lot of situations it can win games on its own. But when it comes to Tearlament Yubel, it has the added bonus of being able to destroy because you can destroy any monster that as long as it's dark, right? And all the Tearlament monsters that fusion summon are dark, so you can go like normal merrli, mill 3, depending on what you mill after. You can go Nightmare Pain, pop the merrli, add whatever, then merrli's effect will trigger to fusion summon, and there's just so many little cute plays like that you can do thanks to Nightmare Pain being involved. And then obviously like it searches every single Yubel card in the deck pretty much, so yeah, you got to play 3 of it. Then for the final 3 up, we're going to be playing 3 Nightmare Throne. So this along with the Gruesome Grave Squirmer is one of the newest cards to come out of Legacy of Destruction, right? And this is probably like one of the preferred play starters just because it helps ensure that you actually get to combo off as you can destroy a Spirit of Yubel from your deck and then summon a regular Yubel, or if your hand is already broken enough, you can add like Grave Squirmer to your hand, or if you just want to start with like Samsara Lotus, you can do that as well. And then when you're face up like Yubel monsters get destroyed too, it provides you with additional fodder because it's able to cheat out cards like Terror Incarnate or Ultimate Nightmare if you decide to play it. This card just does so much. But yeah, you know, you got to play 3 of it. It's literally one of your main play starters. And to go with that, we're going to be playing 1 Terraforming, you know, to search it out, and 1 Primeval Planet Perlereino. So this is the entire reason why we're playing the Destrudo engine. We basically start off with Nightmare Throne first, preferably. Then once we're done with our Yubel shenanigans, Destrudo will come back, pop the Nightmare Throne, and then you get to add Primeval Planet Perlereino. And then from there, you're ideally going to be able to start popping off with your Tearlament portion of the deck. And, you know, it works out pretty well if you're actually able to get access to the Destrudo. But it's fine. You know, I don't really miss it. Especially because, like I said, far too often I would find myself just bricking on like multiple planets whenever I'd play this deck. So the 3-1-1 ratio, I think it works out pretty well. Then for the other spells, we just play 2 more, being the 1 Tearlaments Grief and the 1 Foolish Burial. They're basically the same thing, right? Tear Grief is like a Foolish and an Emergency Teleport combined into 1. Sometimes you can add back traps, but that effect doesn't really matter. We're basically just using it to special summon a tier monster and help us advance our engine. And then that's it for the spell lineup. And then we have our traps, being the 2 Tearlaments sulliek and the 1 Eternal Favorite. You know, we mill a lot, so sometimes you're just going to end up milling the Eternal Favorite, but that's a risk you're willing to take, right? You can also try to play like Mature Chronicle. Like there's a build that I had that does take advantage of it with like 1 Super Poly, 1 Mature Chronicle, and like you're very easily going to be able to just get like 5 counters on that. But like I said, we're going to take it easy. We're not doing the crazy stuff just yet. But this is perfectly fine for what we're trying to do. So yeah, with that, that's the main deck. 40 cards as always. Now we can finally move on to the extra deck. Now when it comes to the extra deck, it's going to be a little bit more on the controversial side, mainly because it's going to be really experimental compared to the main deck, right? And there's going to be some cards that you may just be thinking, what the hell is this guy thinking, right? Why wouldn't he play this other card? It's really broken. But like I said, it's experimental. I'm just trying out different things, seeing what does and what doesn't work, and then it's very, very much open to change. But until then, we're going to be starting off with the fusion monsters, and we only play 3 of them, even though this is like a, you know, a Tearlament deck. So we're playing the 1 Mudragon of the Swamp. This pretty much enables our Bahamut Toad lines every single time. You have our 1 Predaplant dragostapelia to be able to shuffle back our Mudragon of the Swamps. And then for the final fusion monster, it's not going to be Yubel the Living Defender. I ended up just like cutting that entirely to make room for other stuff. It's actually going to be Tearlaments Kaleido-heart. And I think Tearlaments Kaleido-heart really shines in this deck because it has a lot of synergy, particularly with like Nightmare Pain, for example. And one of my favorite things to do, right, is just go activate Nightmare Pain, pop Kaleido-heart, add whatever Yubel card you may need, and then Kaleido-heart's effect will in turn activate as well to special summon itself back and mill whatever combo piece you may need for that situation. As for why I'm not playing Yubel the Living Defender, even though I am playing Eternal Favorite, we are not playing Super Polymerization in the main deck, so that means we're not going to be really able to make it all that often, and I'd much rather use Eternal Favorite to just bring back our resources continuously than just send it to the grave and pretty much never see it again. Now, you can make an argument for just, you know, having a decent board break in the form of Living Defender, but I really don't think it's needed in this specific deck. I opted more to just like keep it in the side and as like a potential option. Like, it's not always coming in, obviously, but it's nice to have it there with the other super polys for when those 2 cards do end up coming in. And then that's it for the fusions. And then for the synchros, we just played the 1, you know, the 1 Ancient Fairy Dragon. Like I said, you're able to pop your Nightmare Thrones, add your planets, and this also pretty much allows you to start with any normal summon that you want, right? Say you have a hand of Reinoheart, Samsara Lotus, and Dark Beckoning Beast. Like I said earlier, traditionally, you'd want to go for the Reinoheart play first, but because we play Ancient Fairy Dragon, that pretty much doesn't matter anymore. You can start with like your Dark Beckoning Beast, and then you can go for like your Yubel lines, and maybe it'll get like Impermed or Veiler, right? And that's totally fine as long as you have access to Destrudo, because after it gets negated, you go Destrudo, lower its level, make Ancient Fairy Dragon, and then you're going to use your backup plan where Ancient Fairy is going to special summon the card that you basically held in your hand. In this case, it's going to be like Reinoheart, right? So, and then you still get both of their effects. And you know, it's just it's really versatile with the way that you can use it. So I really love this card. And then that's it for the synchros. And then for the exceeds, you have your Bahamut Shark along with your Toadally Awesome for the Bahamut Toad line. Very easy to make. We play a bunch of darks. We play the Yubel or the Tearlament cards. Yeah, it's just super easy to make. And then you play your 1 Superdreadnought Rail Cannon Gustav Max. This is a time card, obviously, but you can still use it to OTK your opponent fairly easily. We're not playing Juggernaut Leave just because the extra deck space is super tight, but you can include it if you want to, but I think this is more than enough in most situations. And then for the final Exceed monster, you play the 1 Varudras, the final bringer of the end times. You know, this deck, especially once Phantom Yubel releases, it can very, very easily put up fields of Appaloosa plus Toad plus Varudras, and that's without Phantom of Yubel. It's only going to get better with Phantom of Yubel, but I don't know. You know, just having multiple Omni Negates backing your Appaloosa is pretty much just invaluable. So yeah, you got to play it still. And then that's it for the Exceed monsters, and you play your links. You play the 1 Barricadeborg blocker. This is probably the most cuttable card in the extra deck, if I'm being honest, but it does help sometimes. Like, you can discard a card to help fulfill your opening of the Spirit Gates plays. During the end phase, if you discarded a card, you get to add back any continuous spell or field spell. So it does give you like options for like your post turn 1. And then while it's face up on the field, even though it's almost never going to be because we're typically going to link it off. But if it is for some reason face up on the field, you basically just, your opponent cannot destroy your face up spell cards. So yeah, you know, and there's a lot of them in this deck, right? You have your field spells, you have your Nightmare Pains, your Screams, your opening of the Spirit Gates. You have tons of options. But yeah, like I said, it's still the most cuttable card probably. And then after that, we play 1 Abyss Actor Super Producer. I don't know how to feel about this card, honestly. Like, I like it, but I hate it at the same time. Like, it doesn't really do too much, but just having the option to be able to pop your own cards, as long as they're face up, right? Because that's what this card does. And there are a lot of uses, right? You can pop your Tearlament Scream to float it into like a sulliek and then have free fodder for your tier caches in your graveyard. You can pop your Spirit of Yubels while you have like a face-up Nightmare Throne, and then you can trigger your Nightmare Throne to bring out your ultimate Nightmare as well as your original Yubel. And then just like that little play right there, right? So you have the Abyss Actor plus your Spirit of Yubel with a Nightmare Throne, and that's pretty much like an instant Appaloosa, which is pretty cool in my opinion. But yeah, you know, like I said, we're just trying stuff out. And I figured, why not toss this in? The next, we play the one Muckraker from the Underworld. Now, because this is a Tearlament slash like Yubel hybrid, this is pretty much always just going to be like the last resort card. And you're basically just using it to bring back Spirit of Yubel or like Samsara D Lotus if you have like anything else. But you typically don't want to make this early on in the game because there are a lot of other monster types that you play that aren't themed. So yeah, just be aware. Like I said, this is pretty much like a last resort card. And then after that, we're playing the one IP Masquerena, which we always use to make SP Little Knight because it's a good card. But we're also playing Sprite Sprint. So, you know, we now have multiple options for what we can make with our IP Masquerenas. And Sprite Sprint also has like a lot of extra utility as well, right? Because you get to send the merrli to fusion summon during your opponent's turn or your turn. And then on top of that, because we typically have like a Varudras on the field, it's always going to have like an extra material as long as you decide not to pop a card. So you get the Omni Negate, plus you get a free special summon balance off the Sprite Sprint, and it does come up pretty often if I'm being honest. And then for the final monster, we're just playing the one Appaloosa Bow, the Goddess. It's a good card, you know, Baron, Savager Band, but this card's still around, so we gotta abuse it until we lose it. And with that, that's the Yubel Tearlament deck. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys next time. See ya!